Hey everybody, it's Monday. It's Jim, it's Matt, and boy oh boy, Matt. We go away for a few days, and what the hell happens? The world comes to an end. Let's start with the CFP.
Mhm.
Um, I gotta say, Miami surprised me, but Alabama just quit.
Yeah, yeah. Miami is a case that we knew kind of what they were size wise on those lines of
Hmm.
scrimmage. They'd been pretty physical all year.
Sure.
Um, but there was a couple games there throughout the conference that didn't matter. SMU, Louisville, where their mistakes really caught up to them.
Hmm.
They've played relatively mistake free through these first two games in the CFP, and it's worked out for them. Their offense hasn't really had to do a whole lot because their defensive line just is that good,
Hmm.
and Carson Beck really hasn't had to do all that much because their offensive line has been just that good.
Hmm.
They've pushed around Ohio State and they pushed around Texas A&M for the most part as well. And in terms of that Ohio State offense, it didn't show up in any of the critical moments this year. Every single time they needed it most, it disappeared. I know they won that Texas game. Their offense was not there during that Texas game.
Hmm.
They lost to Indiana. Their offense wasn't there during that game either. And then when they needed it most against Miami in the CFP, it disappeared at that point in time too.
I
So
think
they had
Brian. I'm
one
sorry.
big
Go ahead.
explosive. I was just gonna say they had one really big explosive play that was then backed up by a Julian saying pick six on a bubble screen. So just when they got things going, they just set themselves right back off the tracks.
I'll be honest. I've watched a few Ohio State games this year. Not overly impressed, frankly. Ryan Day's play calling is just it baffles me.
Well, so there's two things to remember here.
Hmm.
Brian Hartline had been calling the plays for the majority of the season.
Right.
But once he took that USF job, Ryan Day took over as the play caller.
Hmm.
So that was your Big Ten and that was your CFP semifinal game where Ryan Day's your play caller. And again, you said you hadn't been impressed. There's not much to be impressed about. You got 10 points and what they put up like 14 against Miami. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
So it's been two rough showings from the offense when Ryan Day's been calling the plays.
Hmm.
But to be honest with you, I think that's just what that offense was against really good defenses.
Hmm. Well, again, if they didn't get, as you say, they didn't get tested until they did, and when
Mhm.
they did, they got whacked. Now, you and I are SEC boys. Oof, man. Um, we'll save Georgia for a minute. Kirk Herbstreit, I think, hit the nail on the head in the Rose Bowl when he said in the second half that Alabama just gave up. And I gotta say, I have no love for Alabama. I'll be open about that.
Mhm.
But I've never seen them embarrassed that badly.
Yeah, and
They just got manhandled by Indiana.
and that goes back to two out of the three of their last games. They really got manhandled in general.
Sure.
I think I can make a case that Oklahoma was the better team when
Hmm.
they played Norman. But Alabama did end up winning that game. But yeah, they really did just kind of lay down and quit. I don't know if Ty Simpson was hurt or if he was hurt, how hurt he was. But they just never really gave resistance. They scored 3 points. They scored in the second half with their backup quarterback. Uh, they couldn't really stop Indiana. They were pretty much scoring at will the entire time. They got pushed around. And after the first like two drives, the first two series, it just looked like they just kind of stopped caring, which is really weird to see out of an Alabama team. But, with all the noise that surrounded them throughout the season, especially in reference to Kalen DeBoer, it kind of makes you wonder how much buy-in there was in that locker room throughout. Because Ty Simpson kept playing the we're the underdog card, and it can only get you so far before you actually have to start trying.
I give nobody on the Alabama team a pass. Okay. We're talking about 27 5 and 4 star players on that team. We're talking about they played against an Indiana team they didn't have one. So if you want to quit, quit. You know, transfer. You don't like the coach, leave. Okay. I'm tired of getting blaming it on Kalen DeBoer, blame it on this, blame it on this, not Nick Saban. That's crap. That is total crap. You either want to play football or you don't. And Alabama in the last 3 games were outplayed by everybody they played. And so there is a time when, even Paul Feinbaum's going to have to come to Jesus moment when Alabama isn't Alabama anymore. Okay. And that is why, probably to a great extent, that Nick Saban left, because he knew these kind of things were going to happen. It wouldn't happen. I don't know that Alabama would have gotten blown out badly by – they'd have lost Indiana, but they would not have been blown out had, Nick Saban on the sidelines, because he would have probably dismissed half the team before he'd had them on buses going back to the hotel. But that was an embarrassment, an absolute embarrassment, and an indictment in many ways. And this is not fair, but it's true. An indictment on the SEC.
Yeah, and it's a game where you look at the Miami and Ohio State spread. Maybe the odds makers just kind of missed on some of these games.
Sure.
The Miami and Ohio State spread was 9.5 points. That Alabama Indiana spread was 7.5. Right. And those were 2 wildly different games where Alabama didn't look like they had a shot, and obviously Miami took care of their business. And so it makes you think, like, where's the mystery? Because they weren't – like, Indiana didn't just absolutely out-talent Alabama at all. Like, that just wasn't going to happen, just based on the guys that Alabama has on that roster and the total makeup of the roster. 4 and 5 stars littered throughout. We talked about it. But Indiana is the better coach team. Like, that, I don't think that's any debate at all. What Curt Cignetti does in terms of their pregame prep and really being ready for an opponent, and even their in-game adjustments as well. It's probably the best, if not the best in the country right now. And they handled them. And part of the reason they handled them is because all those 4 and 5 stars on Alabama's roster maybe started looking other places.
Think about this. The coach who's got the number 1 team in the country, James Madison. He came to them from James Madison. Indiana hasn't been this good in not just a decade, in a century, of playing college football. He's there. He likes being there. He likes the way that he's coaching. And he looked after the game at the Rose Bowl almost as if he was the losing coach. There wasn't a lot of it, and he kept saying, this isn't done yet. We won a game, but we still have games to play. And so he wasn't buying, he wasn't raising the trophy and jumping around. He was like, okay, business here, done. Check that off the list. Next shot, we got to face a team in Oregon. And let me just say this. Stop it, Big Ten. Stop Big Ten. This is not this. They keep saying, well, we had 2 Big Ten teams in there. Yeah, no, you don't. Oregon is a Pac-12 team. Okay. Dan Lanning coached them in the Pac-12. Yeah, fine. They came into the Big Ten, but let's be honest. They do not get the money that all the other teams get. They came in on half deals. Okay. And they recruit and play like they're still playing in the Pac-12. So no, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that are they in the conference? Yes. Are they run like the other conference teams? No. If they were, they probably would be terrible. Dan Lanning's running this team with a predominantly, West Coast recruited team. So I'm not buying it. Sell me all you want to. Big Ten, no. There's not 2 Big Tens here. We got a Pac-12, we got a Big Ten, we got an SEC, and we got an ACC. We got no Big 12, which doesn't surprise me. But that's what we got in the Final Four.
Yeah, I did have one of my friends did look at me this past weekend and say, well, the Big Ten's got 2. Like, what? I said, no, they got 3. He said, what do you mean, Indiana and Ohio State? I was like, no, Oregon is also in the Big Ten. It's like, I don't even think for most, I would say casual people, or really more on the outside looking in, that Oregon registers as a Big Ten team still.
Right. Okay, we have to. Ohio, Ole Miss in Georgia. You had a great article, great column. I strongly recommend people take a look at it. Objectively, looking at what happened in that game. And boy, I'll tell you, I got to say, excuse me, Trinidad Chambliss, what a fun kid to watch play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll start with two more overarching things before I get into the specifics of this game. The first off is Sean McDonough deserves all the due credit in the world.
I heard
know
that,
he
yeah.
won the what was it? It's like the NHSA or something like that, Sportscaster of the Year for 2025.
Right.
Absolutely deserved it. Did a fantastic job on that game on Friday night. Thursday night? Thursday night.
No, Friday. What was it? We were talking. No, Friday night.
It was okay. I'm actually looking at it. It was Thursday night.
Was it? Oh, he's in Miami. He did Miami.
No, Miami was on Wednesday.
Right, but oh no, all right, yeah, you're right. I'm getting my days screwed up here because that's New Year's Eve and then New Year's fine. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So he did a fantastic job on that. And he also still has a feel for the moment where he's talking about at the end of the game, like just get it in order. We know the outcome of this thing. Like let's end it, not have this be the way that this game ends, just the way that it went about. And the second is, and it's an overarching theme in football. I talk about the scheduling and how that needs to change. This targeting rule makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. And I'm not even sitting here like I'm not going to lobby that Georgia lost the game or anything, like that it was a critical call or anything. It's just we have to stop punishing kids, especially when they're not making violent hits. Like Ja'Cory Thomas wasn't making a violent hit. The same way I think that the call that probably should have been targeting on Gunnar Stockton earlier in the game also probably wasn't a violent hit. It was just a guy going to make a play. And you're going to hit him with the above the head or neck area sometimes. That just is going to happen. It's the nature of the game. You can't control what the other guy's doing. You can only control what you're doing. And so to punish these guys and toss them out for halves full games entirely,
right?
It's insane. It's awful. Tack on the 15 yards, fine. But we got to find some tiers in this thing. That's more than just an immediate, yank them for a full 60.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's just it's far too harsh a penalty, especially when you look at the rules that they have placed in the NFL right now.
Well, it's kind of like let's use a soccer analogy, right? There's a difference between a yellow card and a red card. Okay. How many times have we seen guys get targeted when, the defensive back is taking the angle, he's running at the guy either slips or somebody else gets him before he gets there, and all of a sudden, as he lowers to tackle him, which would be the way you tackle somebody, by that time, instead of getting him where he thinks he's going to get him, which is right about the top of the chest, he ends up hitting the guy either shoulder height or helmet on helmet. He wasn't aiming for that. Okay, you could see that, but it's helmet to helmet. Helmet is not good, but is it an intentional helmet, or is it an accidental helmet to helmet? You want to give me a yellow card and 15 yards for helmet to helmet? Fine. Do you want to give me a red card because I did it on purpose? That's a different question.
Yeah, and I'll also say this: by the letter of the law, that was targeting in that game, because it was contact to the head or neck area of a defenseless receiver.
Right.
Textbook, by the rule, that is targeting. But you watch it, and it's not targeting. You can tell it's not targeting. And, I mean, Ja'Cory Thomas, he went over to the sideline. You can see it on the broadcast. He's telling everybody, he's like, no, I'm good. I went with my shoulder. Even these guys don't understand. Like, they don't get the rule either. Because, to be honest with you, I don't think the coaches understand the rule as it is. It's a horrible rule. It's broken. You can add it to the laundry list of things that need to be fixed in college football. But, man, are we just punishing these kids who – like, this is a playoff game. This means a lot to him, and he's not allowed to go back in there and play. because of a rule that you have set forth that I think the people who made it probably don't even get themselves.
Yeah, and the other thing is too that I heard a lot of people going, "Well, this is great. We got the officials are letting them play."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. But does that mean that you have to overlook pass interference, or you have to overlook holding? Or, I mean, there are a lot of missed calls, and I'm being fair to all teams, not just to one team or the other team. Or, in every game we saw over that group of 4 games.
Yeah.
Each one of those games, both sides had legitimate gripes on certain plays that it was either an interference play, it was either a bad call on a hold, a not call on a hold, a not call on an interference play. So officiating was pretty terrible all the way along. Now, I get the fact that we want to let them play, get that. But at the same time, you don't want to let them play to the point where one team is taking advantage of another team because they're doing pass interference. And it's if I can see it and you can see it, anybody can see it.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I think Georgia probably got the more generous side of the whistle on Thursday night. I mean, calls like the drive before Georgia went and tied it with that field goal there in the fourth quarter. How they missed that face mask call on Kawan Lacey blows my mind. He's the only guy other than Trinidad Chambliss in that backfield, and the guy that's dragging him down by the face mask. Like, those are the 3 dudes in the backfield. There's a ref that is supposed to have eyes directly on that. The back judge is supposed to have eyes on that. And they missed. I don't know how they missed it. But, I mean, to be honest with you, had that thing flipped and Georgia scores a touchdown on that and Ole Miss loses that football game, you want to talk about a legitimate gripe, that would have been as legitimate a gripe as you could have had. That was an egregious no call. The refs have done a horrible job. But I'll be honest with you, it's not just in football. It's across a lot of these collegiate athletics. And it's because these guys are part-time employees when it comes to doing what we consider to be a very important job in refereeing basketball or refereeing football or umping baseball. And these guys are part-time employees. And so you get a part-time product from a lot of these guys. It's ridiculous.
Well, not to beat this one more time, but we'll go with this. My way of working it. You've got an entire group of folks that are, let's use the ACC crew for a second, in Charlotte. And I love, frankly, the games that they do where they show you how they, decide what is, you're in the control area, you're watching them figure it out. If they see a face mask being held on the TV broadcast, why can they not radio down to the officials or the head official and say, "Hey, wait a minute, you better look at that because that was a face mask."
Yeah, I mean, because again, there's some of these calls where it's just obvious and egregious, and it's one that like it takes a pretty extreme instance to get some of this stuff to change. Like you think back to the NFL, what got the NFL to start or briefly implement where you could review pass interference? It was that no call in the New Orleans and Los Angeles Rams game in the NFC Championship.
Oh, that's years ago, yeah.
That was the call that got them to be like, hey, all right, maybe this does need to be a reviewable call. Maybe we need to be able to look at it because it was that consequential and that painfully obvious. So it takes something egregious, but again, it's officiating. Again, just add it to the laundry list because God knows it's long when you toss in the scheduling and the portal and NIL and targeting and officiating. I mean, it's still a fun product. It's still my favorite product of football, but it's got a lot that needs to be fixed. And in terms, I will say, going back to the game itself, because I feel like we really didn't touch on the game itself all that much. That's a game where apparently it was just a shoe-in that Georgia was going to win that football game. I don't know if I got to say it on here publicly because I was pretty spotty with my availability last week. It was never that, not at all. This was an Ole Miss team that was up 8 points,
Mm-hmm.
or no, 9 points on Georgia back in Athens. Like they were
Mm-hmm.
up 9 points in the fourth quarter. That's how close they were to finishing that thing off. Trinidad Chambliss went 1 for 10 in that fourth quarter in Athens.
Mm-hmm.
They had a flip this time around where they made the plays they were supposed to. And I mean, for a majority of the second half there, he looked like he was, Johnny Manziel reincarnated with some of those plays
Mm-hmm.
he was making with his legs. They made the plays that mattered. Georgia fans can gripe and moan, and I talked about that in my article as well. It's not Mike Bobo's fault. It's not a defense's fault. Sometimes you just get beat, and Georgia got beat on Saturday because Ole Miss made plays when they had to make plays, and Georgia did not. And I can go back to the underlying stats. Georgia hadn't been all that effective on offense in terms of their efficiency, but when they had made their drives, they were top 15 in the country in red zone scoring. So they were converting red zone opportunities into touchdowns at one of the best rates in the country. And then you go back and you look at that second half box score. What happened? Georgia got inside the 20 twice, and they kicked 2 field goals twice in that second half, and that's where you get that flip from.
Yeah, it's good. It was crazy. So now we got a Final Four, and we'll talk about them a little later in the week. But let's move over to the NFC. I mean NFL, and start with the NFC. The Falcons beat the Panthers. I'm sorry, the Falcons beat the Saints. Excuse me. The Bucks beat the Panthers, and so now the Panthers will move on. And meanwhile, back in Atlanta, Raheem Morris and the GM get whacked.
Yeah, the overwhelming reaction that I've seen online is
Mm-hmm.
like a thank God kind of a
Mm-hmm.
thing. I was in the camp that thought you should probably fire Raheem Morris. I was a little more bullish on firing Terry Fontenot.
Mm-hmm.
Fontenot, I'm not exactly sure how you say his name.
Fun, no.
Just because you go back and you look at his drafting, he's done a pretty good job in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
He did a really good job this past year with his drafts. They've done a really good job drafting. They just haven't found a steady presence at the quarterback position in his time there. But he's built a really good roster, and if they get the right head coach and the right general manager in there, this is a roster that's full with talent. Like all your skill positions are good. Now they're going to have to figure something out at the quarterback position because Michael Penix isn't going to be ready to start the year, and Kirk Cousins isn't the answer. I'm sorry, he isn't. Like there's no scenario where you're just using him as a stopgap going into next year. I think just because it's not going to be conducive to what you want to do, but win-win day for the Atlanta Falcons because they got the firings that they wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and they also beat the Saints, which means a lot to the people of Atlanta.
Yeah, I think that for the most part, Raheem Morris, who is a good guy, always seems to be hired in absolutely ridiculous situations where no one else would maybe take the job. And so they go and they get Raheem, and all of a sudden, Raheem doesn't have the roster. Now, he had the roster this year. Okay. There's no question about that. But, the Jekyll and Hyde offensive situation was just a mess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But, look, it is what it is, and we'll see. There's going to be plenty of coaches available for Atlanta to look into, and Matt Ryan, I guess, is going to join the search group to find out who get a general manager in there, and I assume the general manager they'll hire first, and then the general manager will hire the coach. That's normally how it works, but we'll see how that goes. I mean, Arthur Blank has rolled out the checkbook. It's not like he hasn't spent. And it's not like the fan base doesn't support them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're 8 years without making the playoffs is way too long for Atlanta Falcon fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's something I'm still curious to see. I know Matt Ryan's taking a front office role with them, but there's something culturally there that has to change. And and hopefully that's just a GM and a head coaching hire away. But culturally, Atlanta's been a losing place for the majority of its existence, and so they have to find a way to figure that out, how to build a winning culture inside that building, and it starts from the top to the bottom. But it is a good start that Arthur Blank saw what happened this year, and to be honest with you, they were not losing to the Jets away from making the playoffs, from being the NFC South representative.
Sure.
But that wasn't good enough for them. And it's good on him for recognizing that I think it was like a 4 or 5 game win streak to end the season.
Yeah.
Is something that was not good enough to bank on going into the next season.
Seattle manhandled San Francisco, which I was surprised. I mean, I wasn't surprised that they won. I was just surprised that they, chased Christian McCaffrey all over the building, and Brock Purdy and pretty much everybody. And by the way, I'm not sold on those all black uniforms that the 49ers play. It's like, come on, guys, put the red and the gold or silver on, and let's start playing. But Seattle played well, and they deserve the number 1 seed, and they're getting it. The Eagles decided to sit everybody yesterday and basically give Chicago the number 2 seed. And so we've got a bizarre set. I mean, we don't have, for the first time in a long time, we don't have Patrick Mahomes. We don't have Lamar Jackson. We don't have the Lions. There's a lot of teams that we're looking at that everybody thought was going to be there. And they're not there. It's pretty much a wide open situation. It's almost like the CFP. It's a very wide open opportunity.
Yeah, it's seemingly just full of fresh faces. Same with those semifinal matchups now that we've got. In college football, it's all fresh blood. It feels like in terms of that. You got the Steelers. I don't think anybody's going to be picking them to win a game, much less a Super Bowl. Really what it boils down to is you're just going to start looking really in the AFC. The Patriots and the Bills are two big ones that you're going to look at. And then over in the NFC, it feels like you have this high collection of teams. But the way this is going to work out is who's hot going into it. People, I think, criticize Sean McVay and the Rams for playing all their starters when they didn't really have any impact on seeding, what seed they were getting. Talk about, maybe it's for Stafford's MVP case, this, that, or the other. There is something to be said for going into the playoffs with momentum, and because it matters. Like, you remember back to when the Rams made it a few years ago, back in 2021. And that was a team that nobody really picked them to make the Super Bowl, but they got hot and they had the right talent. Like, the NFL is something where your talent is going to be pretty consistent across the board once you get into these playoffs. Who's hot, who's playing their best football, and who can execute on a week in and week out basis. And getting a win and staying in rhythm, especially when you have a game not that far in the future, it's imperative going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I would not have. I agree with you. I think the Rams did the right thing by playing their starters. I think Philadelphia basically ceded the number 2 seed to Chicago, saying, okay, we'll take number 3. Well, that's fine, but not so sure that was a bright move on their part.
Because if you're Philadelphia, it's not like you've had a fantastic, holes can be poked in our team. Like, yeah, we're just going to figure it out once we get there. That offense has not been good for the majority of this year. Boy, wouldn't it be nice to go against a really bad Commanders defense, kind of get your offense, get the confidence going into the playoffs. Oh, by the way, the Bears lost, so you would have had the 2 seed if you'd just beaten a really bad Washington football team.
Well, the thing that I thought was fascinating in that game was that had you started your starters, okay, you likely would have been up enough by the third quarter. At the end of the third quarter, you could have rested them in the fourth quarter. But now, if you didn't start them at all, It's almost like even if they start at half and say, okay, guys, go over and we'll let the rest of them go. There's a lack of urgency, and I think Philadelphia, it's going to come back to bite them. Philadelphia hasn't played well all year.
Mm-hmm.
The lucky part for Philadelphia is they're in a division that was pretty horrible. So as a division, you got the East and the South were horrible divisions in the NFC. You got the Central and or I guess the North and the West, who were actually the best. And so Philadelphia didn't win any amazing prizes for making it work. They just they were benefited by a division that was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't have many signature wins over the season. The game last night, which the Ravens and the Steelers played, I thought was a typical Ravens Steelers game, where crazy things are going to happen. Lamar Jackson made some Lamar Jackson plays, but I'm going to have to say I was impressed with how smart. I shouldn't say that it surprised me. It doesn't surprise me, but that when the Steelers had that, what do they call it, the brotherly push, and didn't make it at the end of the first half.
Mm-hmm.
And then Aaron Rodgers comes back out in the second half and goes, okay, no problem, we'll pick it up. I thought Aaron Rodgers played an amazing game last night. Given the fact he didn't have his number one receiver, and he basically audibled the entire game. Mm-hmm. I don't think one of those plays, the way he was running around talking to people, I'm pretty sure that most of those plays were not what Arthur Smith drew up for him to play.
Yeah, they talked about it on the broadcast too last night. They said they put a lot of time and effort in throughout the week at considering what Aaron does at the line. Mm-hmm. They talk about it because he knows what looks to get him into. He's played quarterback for a really long time. He's more that older model. He sees coverage really well, and he understands what looks to get him into, and that's really beneficial. He played a really good game, and that is the one thing that I do wonder about this Pittsburgh football team going into the playoffs is, and I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they get DK Metcalf back for this game. Yep. So what does that offense look like with their number one option back? Mm-hmm. Does it change anything? Because Aaron Rodgers threw for almost 300 yards last night, and they didn't have
9 different targets.
Yeah, and Kenneth Gainwell is your number one receiver. He's a daggone running back. Like, that's not supposed to happen, but he's making the plays where he can find them, and that's where he found them a lot of the time. And so, getting that legitimate receiving threat can open a lot of stuff up in this offense potentially, especially considering they're going to host a playoff game. I can't remember who they're going to host, but I know they're going to host it. Houston. They're hosting a playoff. Oh, never mind. I take it all back. That Houston defense is going to shut them down. I don't see a way around it, even if they do get DK Metcalf back.
I never, ever underestimate Mike Tomlin. On paper, it looks that way. Mm-hmm. But I'm not look, do I think that Houston is right now the better team? Yes. They're also the most inexperienced team. Mm-hmm. And let's see, if they put Aaron Rodgers on the ground a lot, then there are going to be problems. I don't know that their offense is I don't know. I think it's going to be a fascinating game. I don't think it's going to be – I think it's going to be a lot closer than people may think. Now, for all I know, they'll get blown out 40-0. But I don't think that I think Aaron Rodgers is smart enough to understand how to get around some of it. But they're a good defense. I'm not selling them short. But they don't have a lot of playoff experience. Mm-hmm. And playoff games are different. And I can assure you all you have to do is talk to Lamar Jackson this morning. He'll tell you that playing at Acrisure Stadium is not easy place to play.
Yeah, no, it's not. And, just looking at that Texans offense, you're 100% correct. They have not been great. Been hanging around the 20-point mark for a majority of this.
Well, the defense has turned them over so often that they've had short fields the whole time. They haven't had to drive a long way to get scored.
Yeah, it's the same thing I talked about with Georgia and that offensive efficiency is, if they give them some short fields, then the offense is probably going to look pretty good. But if it's a game where your average starting field position for the Texans is, like they're 25, that's 25 or 30. That's not necessarily a recipe for success for Houston.
No, they're not a long drive team. They're not built that way. C.J. Stroud is a very streaky quarterback.
He is,
and we'll see. I mean, we'll see. But last night, when you see Boswell, who had 90 plus extra points in a row, clank one off the upright, then you see Lamar make a magnificent play, and the catch was even better. I mean, the catch was phenomenal. They high pointed that. That was amazing. They're in field goal position, and Luke comes in and shanks it, and that ends it. And there was a very interesting thing. I don't know if you saw it or not, but Boswell, the kicker from Pittsburgh, went over after the game to Luke, and Luke was just beside himself. And Boswell, basically, they asked him after the game, what did you tell him? And he said, look, I just said to him that I missed 2 field goals in a Super Bowl game. He goes, I missed field goals in playoff games. I missed field goals that lost us games that could have kept us in the playoffs. He said, you're just a rookie. You're going to be around for a long time. You're a good kicker. Don't let this one kick define you. Let it go and keep going. And I thought that was a class act from Boz.
Yeah. And I'm also going to highlight this is there's I guess you'd call it a trend in a sense online. People are really brazen behind the keyboard.
Sure.
You go to Tyler Loop's, actually, I think it's a post that's primarily on his fiance's page, but it's a picture of them. It has 4,000 likes and it has almost 13,000 comments. Now, I'll just let you guess why there's 13,000 comments on this page. They've now been limited, but they're ridiculous. You don't need to. I get it. He lost the Ravens a football game, technically.
The Ravens lost the football game.
But that's what people like. They don't go through that process, and they don't think about that. They say this guy missed this kick, and that's why we lost this football game. On the abstract, just looking at it,
sure,
absolutely, yeah, sure, right there, looking at it, simplest way to think about it. There are a dozen other plays that lost the Baltimore Ravens that football game throughout the entirety of the 60 minutes. You don't lose on one play the same way you don't lose on one refereeing mistake or anything like that. You lose
or even win on one play.
Yeah, you don't. You lose and win football games throughout the entirety of a 60 minutes because you put yourself in those positions throughout the entirety of the 60 minutes. It's easy to look at one play and define it, and that's fine. You can do that. But this game is played for 60 minutes. You don't win it without playing a full 60 minutes, and you don't lose it without losing it for a full 60 minutes either.
No. And, it does bother me tremendously. And we've talked about this. It bothers us both. That you get keyboard warriors there who don't, they think they know football. They think they know sports. And then it doesn't happen to have to be football. It can be baseball. It can be any number of things. I mean, God love him, Bill Buckner. I mean, Jesus, what he went through over the years. So many different players were, in one way or another, cast as the guy. Look at Scott Norwood. He misses that field goal in Super Bowl 25. He makes that Super Bowl field goal in 2025, and Bill Parcells ain't the genius anymore. Okay, that miss probably paid more money for Bill Parcells than it did for, even if Scott would have kicked it. But, you can't define a single player by a single game or a single mistake that they made. And you hope, but that's the problem with social media. You got guys who Dweezil35 thinks the guy doesn't do it. I mean, I listened to Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Tampa Bay morning radio this morning, just sampling what was going on. And I thought one of the most interesting things, Baltimore radio wasn't, I mean, they weren't panicked. They were kind of like, we didn't think we were going to make it. We thought maybe we could make it. We didn't. We lost. It'd been fun to win, but we didn't. And so what do we have to do? We have to think about what happens now. Tampa Bay radio, basically was like, so, okay, what happens now? What happens to Todd Bowles? Do they extend Baker Mayfield? What's the deal there? And in Pittsburgh, I thought this was pretty interesting. I mean, they were excited. They were happy to win. They were happy that Aaron Rodgers played well. They did something which I thought was a class act. The morning show on the Fan in Pittsburgh, they felt badly. They were looking at the social media you're talking about, the posts, and on their social media, their morning show social media, they put a link to Johns Hopkins Children's Center, and they said, let's see how much money we can raise in his name for that charity, because he didn't lose that game. He goes, no. He goes, if we would have lost that game, how many people would have blamed Boswell for missing the extra point?
Yeah, everybody, and that's why it's a team game. It's a team sport. It's played that way for a reason. No one player or one play loses a game in a team sport ever. It's just not the way it goes.
Yeah, and Tomlin in his press conference was that way. He said, look, he said, he goes, within a matter of a minute and 37 seconds, we went from, oh my, so how did this happen, to, oh my, we won. It's just the game. Just the flow of the game was such frenetic in the fourth quarter. He says everybody was running around because there were plays we didn't make. There were plays they didn't make. He says there were points we left off on the field. He goes, we scored that touchdown before the half, and we come back out because we're not talking about that field goal miss today. He said, or the extra point. And I'm sure Harbaugh was the same in his conference, talking about different. Each team left points on the board, and it could have gone either way. And it's a typical Steelers-Ravens game where, they're almost always a one-score difference. And so there you go from that standpoint. We're coming close to the end of our time here today. Over the weekend, from New Year's all the way through yesterday, and we saw a lot of football. Is there anything that you saw over the weekend that struck you in a way that encouraged you or discouraged you, or what?
I'll say going back to that Georgia and Ole Miss game, because just to be honest with you, it's just the one that I know the best.
Sure.
I was really impressed with how much better Ole Miss had gotten throughout the year. There was this talking point storyline, and I know I fed into it because I from what I saw, it was true as well, where this Georgia defense had gotten better throughout the year, and that was true. But apparently, when Lane Kiffin left, the Ole Miss Rebels were just no longer allowed to become a better football team. I didn't get that at all. They did a much better job throughout that game, especially in the second half of stopping the run. They got a lot better throughout the year on that defensive side of the football. And, I don't think enough credit was due really to what they did because they put a lot of pressure on Gunnar Stockton. His numbers were not very good. Some of that was him. A lot of it was them. In the second half, which was really where Georgia made their ground in that first game in Athens, Ole Miss shut them down on the ground. I think Eccles was his name, the defensive tackle that won the defensive MVP for Ole Miss. He was fantastic in that second half in stopping the run, and really a key factor. Well, he deserved it, the defensive MVP of that game, because if Georgia's able to run the football in the same manner that they did in the first game, then we're not going to be sitting here talking about Ole Miss. We're not going to be sitting here talking about Trinidad Chambliss and the fantastic plays that he made. And Kawan Lacey, by the way, who ran the ball extremely effectively in that second half, but also made that catch and got the first down on one of those circus plays from Chambliss. So just an all-around better game that was played by Ole Miss. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think Miami is the better football team just based on their two lines of scrimmage. But by no means am I counting Ole Miss out in this football game. They showed to me that if they can beat Georgia, I think they can beat anybody left in this bracket.
You can spend all day long chasing Chambliss over the field. I mean, my God, that one play looked like something out of the backyard when he went from the 20-yard line all the way back to almost the goal line. Then he lets fly with the ball, and 40 yards down the field, he hits his guy. So it's like, man, it was just wild. It was totally wild. What got me over the weekend, and we can wrap with this, is that Lane Kiffin is getting paid by LSU for each and every one of those wins that Ole Miss gets. He's making bonus money, which LSU is paying him for each one of those games, which was on his contract. So if they make it to the championship game, he will have cashed in almost $2 million on games he didn't coach. And then I'm looking on social media and they're going, well, Lane's probably texting the plays to the offense, at the game, and in New Orleans. And I'm like, I got on there and I got in a bit of an argument with him, going, no, he's not. You got to give these guys some credit, for God's sake. I mean, they deserve credit. They don't, those coaches coached their ass off. They played as hard without Lane Kiffin as they did with him. And I think they played. You and I talked about the chip on the shoulder bit. I give those coaches a hell of a lot of credit for putting up with the soap opera that they had to put up with, and still guiding this team to through that gauntlet. Now, how much further they'll go, who knows? Yeah. But to get to where they are is nothing short of miraculous.
Yeah. I'm going to say this, and Jim, I'm going to ask you to excuse my language here. And thank the good Lord we're not on the FCC fairway. It'd be really nice if Lane Kiffin would just shut the fuck up, if I'm being honest. Because he's on social media, and you see one of their players say as much in their post-game comments. He is at these games, and he is on social media. He is doing everything he can to fill his narcissistic need to be a part of this. He's not a part of it. This is no longer your team. You quit and you went to Baton Rouge. Stay there and own it. You don't deserve this. These guys deserve this. You left. These guys deserve this. Please stop posting about it. Stop showing up to the games, trying to take this credit and take the spotlight away from these guys. This is ridiculous. It's asinine and it's childish.
If I were the athletic director and president of University of Mississippi, I would ban him.
I can't stand it. It makes no sense, because what you're doing, and granted, we're sitting here, we're giving it airtime, so there's that. And I know that we're not going to be the only place that does it. Yeah. But it's just trying to steal the spotlight and the thunder away and feed into his ego is all it's doing.
Well, I hope that LSU doesn't win a game for the next 6 years. But I do that every year. So it hasn't worked for me yet, but we'll see what we can do. Matthew, glad to have you back. And we'll be talking to you next week from Hawaii. How about that for some fun? All right, gang, everybody. We'll see you on Tuesday. We'll talk a little bit more about probably 7 or 8 coaches who aren't there tomorrow that were there today as the coaching carousel will begin in the NFL. Till then, for Matt, I'm Jim. We'll see you. Take care, guys. Okay.